So let's start out with just asking anyone in general their view on what's your view on the best way to improve your Iman during Ramadan. Just shout out some ideas that you have heard or that you think about. When you think about Ramadan and you think about wanting to build Iman, what comes to mind? What was that? Someone said reading the Quran, terrific. Anyone else? I'm sure there's some ideas. Salah, okay. Anything else? Nothing else comes to mind. Okay. So people mention those kind of things usually. They say, of course, Tarawih. They say reading more Quran. They might even say abstaining from bad deeds, something like this. These are all great. Obviously, these are all definitely also ways to improve your Iman. But what I want to focus on today, inshallah, is one that is almost never mentioned. Can we do a favor? Can we if we can grab wherever the kids are in the back and maybe either close the doors or keep them quiet? Thanks. Terrific. So I want to focus on an aspect of Ramadan that is counterintuitively almost never brought up, and that is the actual fasting itself and how our Iman can improve through the fast. You know, when someone says, I want to have my prayer be better, I want to have more khushu'ah, I want to have more reflection, I don't want to be distracted, I don't want to be rushed. We all know that the salah is like a spectrum, right? Sometimes you do a good salah, sometimes you do a not so great salah, right? And you could think the same for almost any ibadah. But usually we think of the fasting as, I did it or I didn't do it, khalas. I fasted. What more is there to do? How can I do a good fast or a not good fast, right? So this is why almost all of the lectures we hear during Ramadan are about the other aspects of Ramadan, which are also very important. But we rarely talk about fasting in and itself and how a fast can actually be improved or a fast can be more effective. So just to demonstrate kind of how the quality of our fast can impact us, I need a volunteer. Now, the volunteer is going to get some Oreos. So this is part of the incentive. Who is interested in being our volunteer for today? Nobody wants Oreos? Who likes Oreos? Do you like Oreos? Okay. Do you want to be our volunteer? It's not a big deal. You don't have to come up and do a performance. No. Okay. Come on up for just a second. Come on, it's no big deal. Okay. So this is all that's going to happen, okay? I put 2 Oreos here, right? You have a choice. You're going to bring them back. If you want to eat them, go right ahead and eat them. There's no problem. There's nothing wrong with eating them. If you wait until, where's my phone here? We'll do 15 minutes. If you wait 15 minutes and you haven't eaten them, I'm going to give you 2 more. It's up to you which way you want to do it. You can eat them anytime. There's no penalty for eating them. You ate them. But if you go the 15 minutes, you're going to get 2 more. Okay? There you go. What's your name? Abdul Malik. Okay, terrific. Okay, go have a seat. That's all there is. It's not a complicated volunteer. Okay? So while he's waiting, we're going to hear a story. In 1972, in Stanford, they did an experiment. They took a group of children between the ages of 3 and 5. And in their case, they gave them 1 marshmallow. And they told them what I just said. They said, you can have this marshmallow, and if you want to eat it, there's no cost. No problem with eating it. But if you wait 15 minutes and you don't eat it, we're going to give you a 2nd marshmallow. And then they left the room for 15 minutes. No peer pressure. The child could do whatever they wanted. And this was a famous study in what's called delayed gratification. Anybody heard that term before? No one's heard this. Okay, so this is a term that, some of the ladies in the back have heard it, right? Delayed gratification means when you forego any immediate gratification for the sake of some later consequence. So nowadays, people talk about there's a big problem with immediate gratification. Everybody's flipping, they only have an attention span of 30 seconds and they need some sort of instant thing. Movies in the old days, they'd be slow, dialogue, right? Now there's constant action, all of this. So foregoing, the ability to forego or give up some sort of immediate gratification right now for something that's later, right? You can spend your money today on something you want, or you can invest it. And you're not going to get anything out of it for maybe 20 years, right? But inshallah, in 20 years you will get more. This is a classic example. So what did they do? They followed, so that was one research study, right? But later on, they looked up those kids, and they followed them 30 years later. And they said, let's look at the kids who were able to hold off on eating the marshmallow, and they waited the 15 minutes. And they would look at the other kids who didn't, who just ate it. And was there any difference? Was their life any different 30 years later? It was very different. The kids who grew up later, 30 years later, who chose, now this is a voluntary choice. It's not like we're saying, don't eat this marshmallow. We just said, look, you're only 3 to 5 years old, do what comes natural to you. They were testing their natural instincts. Would they immediately eat the marshmallow, or would they say, hey, I can get a second marshmallow? The kids who waited, they had, 30 years later, they had greater self-control. They had more overall success in their life. They had better grades in school. They had better coping skills for frustration and stress. They had better self-esteem, and they had better physical health. So almost every area of their life was improved because 30 years earlier, they didn't eat a marshmallow. So what's going on, right? So why is the ability to delay gratification such a powerful skill? So it comes down to 2 words. These are if you only remember 2 things from today's talk, these are the 2 words to take back. Impulse control. Okay? Impulse control means you have a feeling, you have a thought. You can either act on it immediately, or you can stop and consider what's best to do. And this is happening all day long. While you're driving, while you're reading, while you're watching TV. Sometimes you're focused, you're at work, you have better impulse control at home. Things might be happening on automatic pilot. There is a famous quote in psychology. It says, between a stimulus and your response, there lies a space. And in that space lies our freedom and the power to choose your response. And in your response lies our growth as human beings. So impulse control is one of the fundamental mental skills that we measure in psychology. I give people tests to determine their impulse control, for example, when I do an ADHD evaluation. So why is passing the marshmallow test so correlated with all these positive outcomes, right? When you have greater impulse control, it gives you the ability to work harder, because when you get distracted, you don't immediately follow that distraction. You stay focused longer, because even if there's multiple things going on, multitasking, you're able to choose one and work on it to completion. And in general, you achieve more. So impulse control is one of those rudimentary skills that we test for and we teach about. Also, better impulse control gives you better emotional intelligence. Why? Because if you face a failure or a roadblock, you might feel upset, you might feel sad, you might feel angry, but you're less likely to follow that down into a depression or to an outburst, because you don't always just act on whatever you're feeling. So you can see how impulse control impacts your whole life. So what does the Quran say about the purpose of fasting? I'm sure the majority of people are familiar with this verse from Surah Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So, O you have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, so you may develop taqwa. So you may develop some constant consciousness about Allah and your accountability. So when I first read this verse like years ago, I didn't understand it. I said, what does fasting have to do with taqwa? How does not eating make you have fear of Allah? It really confused me for a long time. And so now if we think about it in terms of delayed gratification and impulse control, there are two parts to it. Two parts to how we can connect not eating and somehow building greater Iman and improved taqwa. One is the minor delayed gratification. If you think about it, voluntarily abstaining from food and drink builds the ability to restrain yourself from acting on other impulses. So this is voluntarily abstaining. I mean, at least the majority of people in the US, and maybe even in other countries, even if the meals aren't as lavish, usually they have something to eat. It's not like you are just out of luck without any food, which does occasionally happen. But when you are voluntarily experiencing hunger or thirst or something else, and you say, but it's Ramadan, I can't act on it. You know, an outside force is sort of helping you have impulse control by making the rules, right? That skill is getting trained. That impulse control is getting improved unconsciously, even if you didn't know that's what's going on. It's like, you know, if you had to walk 2 miles to school every day, and when you were a kid and you started running to get there faster, you were just trying to get to school, but you're getting in great shape, right? And all of a sudden, 20 years later, you're a marathon runner. So it's better if you know when you're exercising, because you can optimize it. But even if you don't know, if you're doing the exercise, you're inherently building those skills. So this is why this is a great way to think about it. The more control you have over yourself, over your own impulses, the less control over yourself Shaitan has. The second part is the important part. There's always some impulse happening in your mind. Constantly, your mind is moving. Even sometimes you don't want to act on it, and then there's a whisper. Go for it, go for it, go for it, go for it. He never shuts up. So the more control, this is the motivation we have. Why do I need to, I don't want to be a master, a psychology master. Why do I have to go through all this? Because there's someone out there trying to push you in the wrong way. And the more control I have over myself, the less influence he has. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, probably most people are aware that he has recommended people who aren't married that they fast. When I first heard this, I also was confused. I said, what's going on? I don't understand. Now I can see that it won't decrease your desires, but it will make you less controlled by them. So that's the minor delayed gratification. But then there's also a major one. What is the major delayed gratification that links fasting and the development of taqwa? Jannah is the ultimate form of delayed gratification. Because your entire life, all of us need to sacrifice something now in anticipation of some future reward. You know, if you're giving charity, you're sacrificing your money. If you are waking up for Fajr, you are sacrificing your sleep. If you are, even if you just praying your Salah, you could have been doing something else that you stopped doing. So we do it all the time, but it's difficult, to sacrifice what's happening now, because oftentimes you just want to eat the marshmallow, quite frankly. You just want to relax, you want to watch a movie, you went all the way to the masjid for Jummah, do you want to go again for another Salah? You know, so in addition to building patience for general life events, that was the first thing we talked about, we need to build a larger patience to essentially suffer through this life and do good deeds without receiving our rewards until later. You might get some compensation in the dunya, but you're not getting paid for Salah, you're not getting paid for Ramadan, right? Even if you work hard in other ways. And so there's a larger marshmallow experiment going on that we're all already in. So how can we use, I forgot to set the timer. I forgot to push start. I was wondering why it took so long. Okay, we're gonna go 5 more, we'll go 2 more minutes, because I'm sure I talked a decent amount. So how can we use this information we talked about now to improve our Iman during Ramadan? The first thing is we want to think about building Iman versus having Iman or maintaining it, as if we already have it. Usually when there's a talk or something about Iman, it usually says how to maintain high Iman during Ramadan, how to have high Iman during Ramadan. Imagine if I had given a talk today and I said, how for all of us to maintain peak physical fitness? It would seem strange, as if we have peak physical fitness already and we just need to maintain it. But that's usually how we talk about, you don't have high enough Iman, you should have high Iman in Ramadan, how to keep your Iman high. We don't usually think about it as wherever I am, whether it's low, high, or middle, what is my strategy for building it? The Sahaba ended their lives with such high Iman because they were always improving themselves, always building themselves. They didn't start day one when they entered Islam, the people who, opened up entire country, what are now today countries. For example, every day you go into the gym, it's a new chance to build some strength. And the next day, maybe you don't go to the gym and you become a little weaker. Every day we want to approach it as, how am I going to build a stronger taqwa, build more patience, improve my impulse control today, with today's fast. So that's the first takeaway from it. Instead of thinking like, I should have Iman, and if not, if I'm finding today's fast to be difficult, I must have a problem in my Iman. You don't hear a bodybuilder who goes to the gym and says, wow, I was really sweating and it was hard, I must be weak. That's the point of going there, right? Even if you mastered yesterday's weight, you will put more weight on. So by definition, you will always be struggling, right? This is how you will grow. So just that frame of mind, that Iman and Taqwa are something I need to constantly build on a daily basis, and then some days it will go less, sometimes it'll go more. Like we all know, this is how things go with many other things, is the first main takeaway that can change the paradigm. So it's not like Ramadan is one block, but I have 30 days. Oh, fantastic, alhamdulillah. You made it. Come on up. Let's see. Are both of them there? Okay, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Here you go. 2 more. Now, have fun. Don't worry, we're going to give some out to everybody, but the volunteer has to get, his rewards. Another aspect of integrating this into the actual practice of Ramadan is practice observing and monitoring these impulses we're having almost from afar. This is something we train in psychology. We work with people. There are different types of therapy. Sometimes, you imagine you sit on the couch and you talk about your mother and and all of this, right? I don't do that kind of therapy. What we do is almost like training. We do cognitive training and behavioral changes in people's lives. So it's really just like it's like exercise or going to school. And it's primarily determined by the amount of effort the person puts in. So it's not suited for everyone. Some people who aren't really interested in working hard like you would in the gym, it doesn't work out for them. It's better for them to go to a kind of therapist where they just talk and vent and have someone to hear about their life. And that's also therapeutic, but they're not necessarily on like a growth pattern. But the people who come and are very excited to say, I want to improve myself. In a short period, usually 6 months, they're done. And they've met all their goals. And so this is the type of thing we actually train in a daily basis, just like it's a workout. This idea that just because I have a thought, I have an impulse, they're constantly coming and they're constantly going. You know, like there's a moment in the fast, you might feel hungry, you feel thirsty, right? But you can't do anything about it. This is the one case where your impulse control is forced on you, right? But do you tend to just feel more and more hungry and more thirsty the rest of the day until iftar? Is that how it goes? It just gets worse and worse and worse? How is it? No. He says no. What usually happens then? Like, say it's 12 o'clock, you're feeling thirsty, right? Normally you would just grab this and go, right? You said, okay, I guess I can't. Then what happens? Does it just become more and more agonizing until Maghrib? What happens usually? Yeah. It sounds simple, but you would just get over it. Why is that? That is because impulses come and they go. And it seems simple. But if it was that simple, we would all have maximum impulse control. But the reality is, it's difficult to deal with them while they're happening. And so that's why we train this idea of understanding that whatever I'm experiencing, it's temporary. And if I can get through that period, it will relax on its own. And fasting gives us a chance, sort of external force, a rule-based system is giving us a chance to experience impulses and not act on them. And then just realize they subside on their own. And what happens is you gradually become more and more at ease with it. Of course, the beginning of Ramadan is more difficult than the end because you become used to it, right? We need to experience hunger to build the patience to deal with that sensation. So the same is true for other impulses. There are some people who naturally, don't have as much of a temper, right? But other people, they get very excited. The degree to which you get excited and get angry, the degree to which you get stimulated is not the issue. Usually we think that someone needs anger management when they are acting on all of those impulses, right? So sometimes, there's a two-part thing to it. You can teach them to get less angry through cognitive therapy, but some things are very angering. Lots of things. There was the PGCMC meeting yesterday that happened with the congressman about Gaza. The anger people are feeling is legitimate. Not everything is an irrational anger. So learning that, for example, this explains why we have a hadith that says if you're angry, you should sit down or you should lay down. I don't understand. How is laying down going to make you not be angry? Maybe it's not going to make you not be angry, but it's maybe going to make you not go yell at somebody. You're going to wait it out, essentially. It sounds simple, but we literally train and practice these things on a variety of situations. When you have marriage counseling, people think, when people come to marriage counseling, they don't want to show anything bad. Everyone's marriage is fine when they're in marriage counseling. This is how they talk, because they're, obviously it can be embarrassing. But that's actually the opposite of what the therapist wants to happen. They want you to get into it. They're happy when the argument happens right in the room, because now you have someone else there to redirect things in a different way. And so what you're doing is you're getting agitated, you're experiencing the similar emotions that you're doing at home, and now you're learning, maybe I don't have to say the thing I usually say immediately when my wife says this or my husband says that. This is how I respond. And when I respond with this is what she does. And you say, it's the same pattern all the time, because everyone's acting on impulses. So you say, okay, you still felt that way, but I'm in this room, so I'm not going to, the therapist isn't letting me do what I usually do. So I'm learning to cope. I'm learning to experience all types of things, whether it's, we're talking about emotional experiences, but there's all kinds of things. If you're at work and it's difficult to put in the long hours of focus, right? We get distracted. So how can I sometimes get distracted by a YouTube video or some conversation, and I usually act on it. I usually just get diverted. How can I retrain that to become, I get diverted a little bit, and then I bring myself back to my work. So these are just examples about how you can train, all of us can train ourselves in both delaying gratification and overall impulse control, and how that can be one of the main benefits of fasting, especially when it's Ramadan, because part of the reason it's difficult to do voluntary fasts is who wants to put themselves through all this? It's just like, it's hard to get motivated to go to the gym. But if you're on an athletic team and everyone's required to go to the gym, you're there, right? So Ramadan gives you a time when you're going to go through this experience either way. Everything we said is going to happen. We can try to optimize that experience and notice, you know what, a lot of people say I'm on edge. I'm on edge during Ramadan. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. No arguments. Stay away from me. I have one client, he said, I told my wife, stay away from me because I'm on edge when it's Ramadan. So that's one approach. The other approach is to say, you know what, I'm on edge because I'm having a lot of thoughts and emotions and impulses coming up. I'm hungry, I want that, I can't have it, so I'm frustrated. And someone else said something I don't like, I'm frustrated about that. How am I going to address that? Okay. The point of me going through this exercise is to learn to allow these things to come into mind. They'll pass on their own, and I'll get through it. So that's how I'm going to approach this. I'm fasting. I got upset, I got frustrated because so-and-so did this. It's possible for me. Normally, if I was hungry and there was a sandwich, I wouldn't just voluntarily not eat it. So now I know that I can restrain myself during some impulses. I'm going to train in these other ones as well. And the great thing is, let's imagine someone failed the Oreo test, as we did. Would that mean that they're destined to have a bad life? It's not. It doesn't mean that. And it's an important difference because in the Stanford study we talked about in the beginning, right, where there were two groups. Some of them had impulse control and some of them didn't, right? And they had different lives. That was assuming none of them trained at all. They were just regular Americans. And it was just based on their natural, instinctual ability to delay gratification. Some of you may be very good at that. Some of you may have naturally good impulse control because everyone has some pros and some cons, right? Other of you may not be good. It doesn't matter because all of us have the chance to train. Every year of your life, from the time you're puberty until you pass away or if you can't fast, many years you have the chance to improve this. So this is 100% something you can improve because we do it in therapy. Impulse control is not just a permanent thing. We use something called ZPD, the zone of proximal development. This is something good to remember. This is a teaching theory, and it's actually good to remember regardless if you have kids or you just want to learn things yourself. What does that mean? Imagine there is a ladder, and there's 3 stages, right? Or there's maybe not a ladder, let's say a weight. There are some things you can do without anybody's help. You already have the skill to do that. That's like a 5-pound weight, you can pick it up. There's some things you can't do no matter how much people help you. What if I give you some advanced mathematics or I tell you to go build a house, or there's some things that are just outside of my capacity. So attempting to do them is not going to really teach me anything. Or if I give you a 500-pound weight and I said, oh, go work out with that, what do you want me to do with it? Just tug on it and it's not going to move. The key is to keep your students or yourself or your children in this zone of proximal development, and you can take the same mentality with fasting. If it's really tough for you and it's fasting and you're on edge, you don't have to go to the maximum with this because you'll end up losing your temper, right? But also, if I try to avoid any of these impulses, any of these negative sensations by sleeping or watching TV all day or anything, obviously you might want to make the fast a little easier, but if you eat a giant meal at 12 o'clock so that you don't get hungry until for each person finding that area. So overall, maybe I'll finish up soon. Basically, let's try to go into Ramadan with the idea that obviously it's a spiritual development primarily, and with many benefits. We're drawing closer to Allah. We are focusing more on ibadah. We're spending more time with the Quran. We're also spending more time with other Muslims here in the masjid. But it's also a time for us to train ourselves as human beings. Because the Sahaba weren't born the Sahaba. They were born some tribe in the middle of nowhere that the Persians and the Romans just ignored. And they became the greatest society in all of human history. And, there was one hadith from Umar radiallahu anhu, and he was asking the Sahaba when he was Khalifa, if you had, I'm just paraphrasing it because I don't have it written down, but if you could have anything, make a wish. That's what he said, make a wish. What do you want? And some of them said, I want, this room to be filled with diamonds and rubies so I can spend them fi sabilillah. And other Sahabi said similar things. And he kept asking, make a wish. And they said, we don't know, what is the answer, tell us. He said, I wish this room was filled with men like Abu Ubaidah and a second Sahabi whose name I'm forgetting. And I want to send them fi sabilillah. Because he was trying to say that those human resources of the Sahaba are worth more than everything else. They didn't build any giant masajid. They didn't build any libraries. They didn't make any waqf, any funds, like Bill Gates has 100 billion, trusts, right? Nowadays, we put all our sadaqah jariyah is in stuff that we think will last forever, but it won't. It will become a relic, or it'll become abandoned. I mean, how many churches and synagogues are now masjids? Because things change. The one thing that is the best guarantee is building ourselves as Muslims, as human beings, and then passing that on, of course, to future generations. That's where it's a sadaqah jariyah. So this is just an extra aspect that we can go into Ramadan and say, this is my time. The past 11 months, I've been getting on edge. I haven't been focused enough. I used to pray and I would recite all these different surah, and now I say Ikhlas and Asr every day so I can get back to work, etc., etc. There's someone who's on the football team, and he's like, I'm going to get my workout in now, right? And he's racing around this track. And some people might say, why is he running so fast? What's the difference? We're going to come back to the same place, because he knows he's working on his endurance. And then he's putting on the weights and he's sweating and he's doing all this. So really, awareness of the benefits you can get from any exercise of any sort changes your whole mindset. So, even if it's something basic as salah, if I think of salah that something I have to do because I was told if I don't do it, I may not go to Jannah. And that's literally all it is. It's an arbitrary ritual that I was told to do. I don't know if it has any meanings or not, but I do it. It sounds similar to other religions. I'll light this candle, I'll move incest, I'll go here and there, I run between these two hills, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Or I could say to myself, this is a time for me to reflect on, for example, verses of the Quran. So, this is why some person might recite one of the, this is not on the topic of fasting, but I think I gave a recent talk about other forms of ibadah. And one of the examples was to choose verses of the Quran in your salah that are meaningful to you, so that you can reflect on them in the salah. Now, I'm sure many people already do this, but also a lot of us just try to get through it as quickly as we can. So my point is just awareness of some of the aspects of the ibadah, which is all we're reminding us today, for example, for fasting, can really make a huge difference. You don't necessarily have to change your fast. You can change some aspects of it if you're like, you know what, I was trying to make it as easy as possible. Maybe I'll still make it easy, but maybe I'll try to get more into the ZPD zone. I'll make it a little more challenging. But overall, the actions you'll go through during the Ramadan don't necessarily have to change, but your perspective on what's going on, right? Am I going to Tarawih because there'll be more reward than if I don't go? That's true, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that reason, clearly. But if that could be, is that the only reason I'm going? Or am I going, especially if I'm someone who understands Arabic, I'm going and I will hear verses of Allah that I know almost never hear, because we'll be reciting the whole Quran, and I'm going to pay attention and see what aspects of it are impacting my life. These are just examples, right? Either way, I would be in the saf. So really just changing our perspective can have a huge impact. But it's a wonderful question. I'm not sure if any of the ladies or anyone in the back has a question. There's no one to bring in the mic. But maybe, I think not. I think they're moved on. I don't know if there's anyone else, otherwise we can conclude. Oh, you have one. Yeah, this is phenomenal. This is 100%, I 100% agree with you. Um, you know, the Islamic tradition is not filled with a bunch of psychologists giving you psychoanalysis like this, right? It's filled with people giving us spiritual and philosophical tafsir on various things. And it makes sense because not everyone wants to hear a bunch of sciencey kind of things. And so it can be a lot easier and more practical an approach such as this or any other approach like but basically the idea that, like you said, the brother was saying that I'm just focusing on my sincerity to Allah and my connection on with Him. And then, as a result of that, I will indirectly it will be easier for me to not act on impulses, to delay gratification, to stay away from bad deeds. This is 100% the correct way to do it because this is the way Allah has presented to us. He didn't give this detailed cognitive therapy in the Quran. But as a psychologist, when I read all of the practices and the advice in the Quran, I can see clearly that it's a system of cognitive remediation or improvement. But not everyone has to think of it in that way. The best way is to think of it as I will follow, my perspective will be the one that Rasulullah ﷺ taught to me, that I should focus on my sincerity and my khushu' to Allah. And then the rest of that will come. So that's why everyone is getting the benefits of fasting, even without this talk. But we're just taking a chance to say, one of the benefits you've been getting when you focus on your ikhlas, or even if you just get through fasting, is these improved mental skills. And that those skills are partially why you see some people really evolve and change themselves as people. You don't have to have that as the forefront of your mind. Someone like me probably does, but at least it's just maybe a reminder of some of the practical implementations of taking the approach you mentioned, or any of the approaches that really the way of describing it that Rasulullah has taken. So in practice, maybe a lot of people it's better to go back to the regular way of motivating themselves. But just to have kind of on the wall, it's kind of like if you are running in doing some running practice and you're on the football team. You say, well, why are you running it? Well, because I want to get better at football. They take a very practical approach. And someone could say, yeah, well, the reason it helps you with football is that it improves your cardiovascular system, it makes your heart more powerful, and since your heart is more powerful when you're on the field, you do all this other stuff. So it's good to occasionally learn that aspect. But in the daily track, you're not going to be thinking all that. You're going to be like, I'm going to run because I'm going to be better at football. So in this case, I want to maximize my siyam because I want to draw closer to Allah. And if I do that, we'll definitely get these other benefits. It's just good for us to sometimes remind ourselves, what are those other benefits? So I can check, so I can improve some aspects of it. But these are definitely the best approaches to take.
Something to do
Huh.
An extreme, if one may say.
Huh, huh, huh.
So deadly. You get so excited so quickly. So, what's the gimmick on that?
I should have muted it. I thought this would be enough. Alhamdulillah, this is a great question. The brother is asking, are there neurological differences that people have? And does that make one person have a shorter temper than the other, etc.? The answer is definitely yes. There are neurological aspects to all of the aspects of the mind, whether they are physical aspects like coordination, there are emotional aspects, and there's definitely, in child development, they can see when children are just born that they have different temperaments. But the other aspect to neurology is there's neuroplasticity. Your brain can change, and it's always changing. So while it's true that, person so-and-so, he's very quick to anger, and person so-and-so, they're very anxious. And another person, they may get down more often. Another person doesn't have any of those issues, but they don't work that hard. They get distracted easily. Everyone has, Allah has obviously clearly custom-made each person with a set of pros and cons. He hasn't disadvantaged any person with just all negative and another person with all positive. Sometimes we think that because we look at some of the dunya aspects of a person's life. But all of us have gifts that He's given us that we're naturally good at, and all of us have some challenges to work on. There isn't some human being that was born and he was just, he never had a bad thought in his life. I mean, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam got sad, he got angry, he just performed his life way better than the rest of us. But there are verses in the Quran saying don't get so sad, right? In fact, he was, I'm sure, more feeling than any of us could be for his ummah. So the main takeaway is not to get, for example, when I give someone an ADHD evaluation and I'm testing them, I'm saying, biologically speaking, there are certain skills that you have that are less developed than other people. But they usually have other skills they are good at, actually. More creativity, more new idea generation. And the first thing we do is we say, okay, here's the treatment plan. It doesn't, I know someone who is a dermatologist and he has, what's it called? He has dyslexia. I know a dean of a psychology school in Howard University, former dean, I should say, and he had ADHD. So none of these things are lifetime impairments. It's just like the fitness trainer. He says, okay, you need to work more on your leg strength, and you need more cardiovascular, etc. So you're right, there are definitely neurological differences in everyone, because everyone has a different brain. But none of it is really, that's just really the roadmap for how each person has different things they need to work on. If that hopefully answers. Great. And I probably kept everyone too late anyways. Okay, alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala rasulil kareem. Ameen. Thanks everyone for coming.